Welcome back to episode 2 of my Versus series, where I compare the best muscle building exercises by going over the pros and cons before finally giving the verdict of which one is ultimately better for you from a muscle building perspective. If you haven't seen episode 1 where I compared the bench press versus the dumbbell press, then I highly encourage you guys to give that video a watch. I'll throw it up in the cards and I'll also include it in the link in the description below. And today what I'm going to be covering is I'm going to be covering the standing overhead press versus the seated dumbbell press. Both of these exercises are typically programmed in a bodybuilding program or even a strength-based block, but is it really necessary to do both? If so, how do we program them, and which one is ultimately better from a muscle building perspective? These are all questions I'm going to answer in today's video. Starting off with the standing barbell overhead press, we all know how important the big four are, meaning the squat, the deadlift, the bench, and the overhead press are for really building strength, but is it the most effective approach from a hypertrophy perspective? So let's start with the pros. The first pro of the overhead press is that it's going to engage more muscles, making it more than just a great shoulder exercise. No matter what pushing exercise we're doing, we're going to be engaging the shoulders and the triceps. However, with the standing barbell overhead press, we're going to be recruiting a lot more stabilization muscles that's found in our core, even our rectus spinae, that actually is a muscle group that's located in our lower back that actually runs into your hips. You're going to be recruiting a lot more glutes and even upper back, being your traps and your rhomboids. So because of all the muscles recruited when you're performing the standing barbell overhead press, it's no doubt that's an extremely effective exercise for targeting more than just your shoulders. The second benefit of the standing overhead press is its increased loading potential. You are able to load it much heavier than you would with a dumbbell. And as I mentioned with the first benefit, because you're able to recruit more muscles, this makes it an extremely effective compound exercise, really allowing you to push more weight than any type of isolation exercise you can perform. And because you're able to subject your muscles to a much heavier load, then this makes it really great from a muscle hypertrophy standpoint as well. Another awesome variation to the standing barbell overhead press is what's called the push press. The main difference is that in a standing barbell press, as you can see, you are pressing from your chest using strict form. However, with the push press, what you're doing is you're using leg drive to get the bar up. So you're almost just like exploding up through your legs to get the bar up overhead. And because of this, you're able to use more weight. And as I mentioned previously before, when you're subjecting your muscles to more weight over time, you're going to help from a hypertrophy standpoint. So I just wanted to mention that the push press is a great exercise, but no matter whatever one you do use, they are two really effective compound exercises that should be included somewhere in your programs. And the third and final pro of the standing barbell overhead press is its carryover strength to helping improve your other pushing exercises like your bench press, your close grip bench press, and also fundamental bodyweight exercises like push-ups and dips. This is because you're targeting and strengthening the same muscles that you would with any type of pushing exercise. The only thing that's really changing is the plane of movement that you're pushing in. You're going from a horizontal or a vertical. So that's the reason why there's a lot of different carryover strength when performing the standing barbell overhead press. However, since the standing barbell overhead press does work more of your upper back, being your traps and your rhomboids, this is really going to be beneficial for helping you keep your shoulder blades tight and retracted during your bench press. And another awesome benefit is that the standing overhead press is really going to improve your lockout ability. So no matter if you're stuck on the bench press, maybe you have a hard time getting it from to the lockout position, but it's also going to really help improve your tricep strength during like a close grip bench press as well. So now that we've covered the three major pros of the standing barbell overhead press, now I'd like to move into the cons. So the first con of the standing barbell overhead press is that it can put your shoulders into an uncomfortable position if you don't got the form right. And that's the key part of that sentence, if you don't got the form right. The reason being is that it is extremely form driven, just like any compound exercise is. So my advice is to really make sure that you master and learn the form before you start adding weight, because if you are doing it wrong, then it could potentially lead to a shoulder impingement or even a shoulder injury. And this isn't an excuse not to perform the exercise. You really want to make sure that you take the time to learn the form, because there are a lot of strength benefits that come from doing the exercise. And I really highly encourage everybody to really videotape themselves or have somebody watch them when they're performing that knows what they're doing to make sure that their form is on point. With that being said, if you do have bad shoulder mobility, then this could be the reason why your shoulders are placed into an uncomfortable position. So you want to make sure that you're addressing that. Another thing that I want to mention is if you have a previous shoulder injury or any type of injury that's actually prohibiting you from doing the exercise, then I wouldn't recommend doing the standing barbell overhead press. Maybe try to find a substitute like the dumbbell press, which I'll be going over. Another thing that I find that happens is once the weight starts getting heavy, then it's actually going to place a lot of unnecessary tension on your elbow, which can cause a lot of pain, soreness, and even tendinitis. So what I would recommend there is to lower the weight and try that. And if that still doesn't work and you still kind of kind of want to go a little bit heavier, then maybe try some elbow sleeves. I personally haven't used them, but they've been helping a lot of people. A lot of people wear them during the bench press. So if you're finding that you're getting a little bit of elbow soreness because you're going up in weight, then definitely give those a try. And another common mistake that I really see people make when they're doing it is they lean too far back, and this can put your lower back into an uncomfortable position. So you want to make sure that when you're coming up, you're pressing straight up and you're keeping your back almost as straight as possible. And the second con of the standing barbell overhead press is that it can help create or promote muscle imbalances because you are using a barbell and you don't have the weight in each one of your hands like you would with a dumbbell. So if you do notice that one side during the press, if one side is coming up quicker or one side is kind of dominating the movement, then over time what this can do, this can actually lead to muscle and strength imbalances. And we all know as bodybuilders how important symmetry is. So you want to make sure that you're properly addressing them and including some type of unilateral work or dumbbell work into your training. And the third and final con of the standing barbell overhead press is that it's going to recruit a lot less rear delts than a dumbbell press would. What I mean by this is you're actually starting the press from the front of your body, therefore you're going to be targeting your front delts, and as you transition the bar overhead, you're going to be getting a lot more side delts. However, with the seated dumbbell press, since you're actually starting at your side, you're going to be recruiting a lot less front delts and a little bit more rear delts. I just like to mention that any press that you're doing is not an effective rear delt exercise at all, but since they are a very underdeveloped part of most people's physiques, then any exercise that you can really try to do to bring them up will help. So that's why I kind of like the dumbbell variation for kind of reducing the front delt engagement and getting a little bit more rear delts. But with any type of program that you're doing, you want to make sure that you're including complete exercises that are able to develop all parts of your shoulders. So you want to take that into consideration, that if you are doing the standing barbell overhead press, you want to make sure that you're really including the right exercises after up to really follow up and really train those rear delts. So now that we've covered both the pros and cons of the standing barbell overhead press, now I want to move into the seated dumbbell press, starting off with the pros. The first pro of the seated dumbbell press is that it's a more natural range of motion. So since you are starting the movement with both your dumbbells out to the sides, and all you really have to do is press straight up and down, this makes it a lot less form driven as opposed to with the standing barbell overhead press. You have to press from in front of your body, get your head out of the way and press up. So this could be kind of perfect for beginners who are looking to transition into the overhead press. They can start with the seated dumbbell press before moving into that strength-based exercise. And I also really like it from a joint point of view as well. It's a lot safer in your joints or muscles, and maybe if you do have a previous shoulder injury or you do lack that shoulder mobility, then this makes for a great exercise to include instead of the standing barbell overhead press. And it does place a lot of less tension on your elbows, so you'd be less likely to get tendonitis. And because you are supported with a back support, because you are in a seated position, you're going to place a lot less stress on your lower back as well. And the second pro of the seated dumbbell press that I do like is that it helps prevent or correct muscle imbalances. So as I previously mentioned with the standing barbell overhead press, if you do notice that one side is coming up, then what's happening is that side's taking over for the other side and it's dominating the exercise. And over time, this is going to lead to muscle imbalances and even strength imbalances. And we all know as bodybuilders, like I mentioned, symmetry is so important. So with the seated dumbbell variation, you aren't going to do this. You're going to be able to correct that from the start. And another thing that I do want to mention is that this could actually inhibit your ability to actually progressively overload. So if you are looking to kind of progressively overload with the standing barbell overhead press and you notice that you can't do so because one side isn't able to kind of do the work that the other side's able to do, then you're able to kind of fix that with the seated dumbbell press, so you're not limiting your ability to actually progressively overload on the exercise. And the third and final pro of the seated dumbbell press is that it's actually going to recruit a little more rear delts than you would if you were actually doing the standing barbell overhead press. And because of this, you're actually going to be reducing your front delt engagement and placing more towards your rear delts. And we all do know that the front delts are normally more overdeveloped because of the excessive pressing exercises that are found in our programs. So any exercise that can kind of take that away and kind of put more emphasis towards the side and the rear delts, I'm definitely in favor of. So because of that, I do like the seated dumbbell press for slightly recruiting a little bit more rear delts. But as I previously mentioned, a pressing exercise isn't an effective rear delt exercise, and you do need to make sure that you're including the right rear delt exercises into your training to kind of make sure that you're getting full development. So now that we've covered the pros of the seated dumbbell press, now I'd like to move into the cons. The first con of the seated dumbbell shoulder press is that you can't go as heavy as you would if you're pressing a barbell, and this is kind of twofold. The first reason is that your gym might not actually carry heavy enough dumbbells. If you do press a lot of weight, then maybe your gym only has up to 100 dumbbells and you maybe need 120s to press, so this could be a limiting factor. And another reason why you can't go as heavy sometimes is because if you don't work out with somebody consistently or have a spotter, it might be hard to actually get those dumbbells up to your knees, because you do want to conserve energy, as much energy as possible when you are lifting. So really getting somebody to kind of help bring that dumbbell up to your knee so you're able to get into position. And then we all do know that you kind of use your knee to kind of kick the dumbbell up, but we all need that assisted spot sometimes to kind of get from here up to where we need to press. So because of this could be a limiting factor. And from the barbell overhead press, you do have that strength potential and you do have a more increased loading potential than you would with a dumbbell. The second con of the seated dumbbell shoulder press is that it's less of a total body exercise, meaning it recruits a lot less muscle groups. So as I previously mentioned with the standing barbell overhead press, you are recruiting much more muscle groups than just your shoulders and your triceps. You're recruiting your core, being your stabilization muscles, even your rectus spinae, you're recruiting the muscles there. Also, when you're doing, you're supporting yourself with your legs and you're using a little bit of leg drive, you are recruiting a little bit of glutes and a little bit of hamstrings and upper back engagement as well. So when you're actually performing it with a dumbbell variation, you are in a seated position, so you're recruiting a lot less of those muscles and you're placing more direct isolation on your shoulders. So from a total body exercise perspective of recruiting all those muscles, being able to put everything into play, it's not nearly as effective, and because of that, that's going to impact your strength. So that would be the second con, that it's less of a total body exercise than the standing barbell overhead press. And the third and final con of the seated dumbbell shoulder press is that there's less carryover strength for helping you improve your strength in your other pushing exercises. And this goes back to the last con that I did mention. Because you're not able to recruit all those muscle groups, then you're really not strengthening those muscle groups, being your core, all those stabilization muscles that come into play, really your upper back. So this is going to really kind of make it more of a direct isolation exercise because you are performing it in a seated position and all the tension is directly on your shoulders and you are pressing with your shoulders and your triceps. And that kind of also goes back to the con number one that I did mention. Because you can't go as heavy, then it's really going to impact your ability to kind of load the bench press heavier or really get used to pressing a heavier weight. So I think from those two reasons, there's going to be a lot less carryover strength for really helping you improve your other pushing exercises. So now is the time that everybody's been waiting for, which is the verdict. Which one is ultimately better from a muscle building perspective? And I'm gonna have to give it to the seated dumbbell shoulder press. The reason being is because it's gonna recruit a lot less front delts. Normally on your chest days, you are doing an excessive amount of pressing, whether it be bench press, incline press, and because of this, you are really kind of overtraining your front delts and they tend to be more overdeveloped. However, with the seated dumbbell press, you're gonna be recruiting a lot less front delts and placing more on your side delts. So I think from a muscle building perspective or from an overall shoulder development, I think it's awesome from that standpoint. Another thing that I do want to mention is going back to one of the pros was that it's going to help fix strength imbalances and physique imbalances. I think as bodybuilders, that's very important. So by doing something with a dumbbell based movement versus a barbell, that's going to be a greater benefit to you. However, with that being said, that isn't to discredit the overhead press. It's an extremely effective exercise, but it's more geared towards actually building strength. So just to further explain what I mean, I think it's really great to kind of divide your training, like I mentioned in episode 1, into 2 different blocks. So if you periodize your training and have a strength-based block and a hypertrophy-based block, what you can do is you can actually have the strength-based block being your overhead press, trying to progress in strength with that, and then as you move more into a hypertrophy-based block, you're able to include something like the seated dumbbell press. I think that makes absolute sense, and I would highly encourage everybody to give that a try. So therefore, you're kind of going back and forth with each exercise, and you're giving each exercise the right amount of balance, and you're including them both in your program, not necessarily at the same time, but there are phases where you are focusing on one, and then you put that one on the back burner to focus on the next one. That's going to conclude episode 2 of my Versus series, where I compared the standing barbell overhead press with the seated dumbbell shoulder press. If you haven't seen episode 1 where I compared the bench press versus the dumbbell press, then that's definitely a must watch. So I highly encourage you guys to check it out. I'll put the link to the description, the link to the video in the description below, and I'll also throw it up in the cards so you guys can definitely check that one out. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I do have a lot of great exciting content that's planned in the works that I'm super excited to share with you, and I want you guys to be part of the process and the journey of all these great videos that I'm putting out. So So definitely subscribe to my channel and also turn on the bell notifications. I want to make sure you guys get notified every time I drop a new video. So make sure to turn on those notifications. And for those who are new to my channel, I do upload now 3 times a week. It was 2 times a week, so my upload schedule I'll put on the screen just so you can see it, but I'm uploading every Sunday, every Wednesday, and every Friday, and each one kind of has a unique different series that you're able to follow. So yeah, you can check it out on the screen there. And also don't forget to give the video a like. I do appreciate all the support, and the likes do go a long way. So make sure to thumbs up the video, and I'll see everybody here next time. All right, peace out.